favorite things. You have to sit there and listen to everyone argue, try to come up with compromises, and it really just gets in the way of getting work done. The diversity involved in group work threatens our usual habits and behaviors and leaves us in an uncomfortable situation.
When working by yourself, you were stable. You had your own schedule, habits, and places you like to study. But with the diversity of your group, your routine is ruined. The same feelings we have when we're forced to diversify are experienced by children adopted into interracial families.
Potential adoptive parents should consider race during the adoption procedure, because children who grow up without a consistent identity are prone to having a lack of self-esteem and racial pride.
To help better understand our argument, we will explain how transracial adoption can be detrimental to the child's future.
Children who are adopted by parents of a different race face bullying from their peers. Many people say that race should not be important during adoption. However, there are several studies that prove otherwise. For example, there was a 13-year-old adopted Chinese girl named Emily Olsen. She committed suicide because of race-related bullying. This mournful event occurred for many different reasons, but one of the reasons was that her parents did not consider race while they were adopting her. This factor is such an important thing that happens during adoption because it allows for the parents to truly know what they're getting into. But if you don't consider the race, they're not knowing what they got into. So the daughter, Emily, did not know how to handle herself in the society because she didn't know who she was. She had lack of pride for her racial identity.
The Donaldson Adoption Institute, a research center for the effects of adoption, states that interracial families face a range of challenges that same-race families do not. The ability of these parents to handle these challenges will either hinder or facilitate the growth of their child. The report specifically quotes the sense of difference that all adopted children feel, and is only further compounded by an interracially adopted child. If the child fails to come to terms with the sense of difference, behavioral problems are shown to be more common among these children, as reported by their teachers and parents. As these problems continue to manifest, the home environment will become worse and worse and more hostile. Now, our opponents will probably explain how laws in the United Kingdoms about interracial adoption led to an imbalance in the types of children being adopted. They try and take statistics gathered from this study and apply it to American adoption system, however, which does not ban interracial adoptions. There may be an imbalance in the system, but it is not because a parent of one race can adopt a child of another. We suggest that race be considered and factored in during the adoption process, but we do not discourage interracial adoptions. We simply encourage that potential parents consider and address the factors and roles they may have in their child's growth.
When parents don't address concerns that come with interracial adoptions, the adopted child is the one who suffers. Although parents say that their kids are completely accepted regardless of race, children who are adopted feel like strangers in their own families. Dottie Enrico, author of the magazine Parents, provides us with a story of her own childhood. It goes as follows. She was adopted from Korea, but her parents embraced her wholeheartedly as a part of their family, so she obtained all of their cultural identities. She assumed she was white Italian, like the rest of her family. On the first day of kindergarten, one of the other kids pointed out to her that she looked a little different. Even with this, she still believed that she was white Italian, just like her whole family. The lack of identification that she had with her Korean heritage made her an easy target for these bullies and left her in an identity crisis. She was confused as to why these kids were saying that she wasn't Italian. She had no idea who she was. All of this occurred because Dottie's parents believed that love was enough and ignored the way the other people in the world would see her.
So some may claim that race-based adoptions are unconstitutional and illegal according to the 14th Amendment. This interpretation of the 14th Amendment doesn't have to signify that race shouldn't be considered during the adoption process. This amendment prohibits restriction of life or liberty to any person, and some may argue that this is what we're doing to the transracial adoption by putting them in an unfairly hostile environment. By stripping the child of their native culture, we make them feel forced to adopt their parents' culture and it leads to an identity crisis in the future. Parents need to ensure that their child is capable and confident enough to handle racist remarks and instill them with a sense of pride so they don't feel ostracized by the people of their own culture. In a study from Evan B. Donaldson, an employee at the Adoption Institute, he informed the public that when adoptive parents minimizes the importance of racial identity, these children were then reluctant to identify themselves racially. This certain deprivation of self-esteem occurs because the child wants to be more like their parents and thus eliminating racial identity.
According to Janine Lee St. John, an author with the New York Times, minority children adopted by white parents are likely to express a desire to be white. This event occurs because these children are raised knowing only their parents' culture and identity without any clue as to what their own is. This absence of the child's own identity contributes to confusion throughout their childhood, and they grow up unable to understand who they are. When potential parents are planning to adopt, race should be considered to provide these parents with education and experience so that they know how to raise their adoptees in an environment free from confusion.
The consideration of race provides a child with more preferable parents rather than underqualified parents. With an emphasis in race and culture, a child is able to be put in the best environment they can have. In a study from Jody Ramus, as said before, she took two different kinds of situations. She took parents who had adopted and considered race, and then parents who did not adopt, adopted and did not consider race. So the parents who did adopt and consider race were shown to have a better sense of their child, so they were more understanding what they had to do with the situations they would experience in life. Also, they had a better understanding of who the child was. They were able to show that their culture is important and everything about that. Allowing this, the child is able to grow up in an environment where their heritage matters and the child knew who they were and did not have that identity crisis as said before.
Now, imagine you're going to a foreign country, like France. You don't speak the language, much less know the types of food they eat or places to visit. Someone comes up to you and they start speaking French and you have no idea what they're saying. You feel lost, you feel out of place, you feel like a stranger. Adoption children should never have to feel like strangers or out of places in their own homes. Parents that are aware of race can provide a more comforting and loving home for their children. Now, going back to the foreign country example, it's easy to assume that if you knew more about the country, you'd have an easier time there. Well, the same logic abides by adoption. Potential parents that understand the roles and consequences of their actions when they take a child and how to handle these challenges can provide a better home for their children.
With everything we've discussed, what we have in mind first and foremost is what's best for the child and for the parents. Adoption is the most important part of an orphaned or abandoned child's life, and we want to ensure that everything is properly prepared to make them feel at home. When race isn't considered during the adoption process, we allow children to grow up in unfair and hostile environments. As long as we consider all factors, we can ensure that every kid will have a place they can truly call home.